This championship is about to change. For so long, Mark Skaife has been #1. Now, the numbers are stacked against him, and the challengers are lining up for a change of champion.
Yeah! Fantastic lap, mate.
Marcus Ambrose, Greg Murphy, Russell Ingall, and Skaife. It's a title fight across the Tasman. The second last round of the V8 Supercar Championship from Pukekohe in New Zealand on your home of motorsport, Network 10. Yeah!
No other destination like this in the V8 Supercar Series. 40 kilometres south of Auckland, Pukekohe Park Raceway, the only international stop on the championship calendar. And speaking of the championship, it is crunch time in the title race. Coming up today on your home of motorsport, the Shootout and Race 1. 100-kilometre event, that's 36 laps around here. 27 laps is 75% of the race distance. We'll only have one compulsory pit stop, and that is for tyres. The pit window is open between laps 2 and 25. Funnily enough, there is a long white cloud overhead, and it could dump down some possible showers, a maximum temperature of 19 degrees, as if Pukekohe Park Raceway needs some showers to make things interesting. Good afternoon to you. I'm Matthew White, and welcome to round 12 of the V8 Supercar Championship, the second last round of the series. And I mentioned that it is crunch time in the title race, and the point score paints a little bit of a picture for us in there. You can see that Marcus Ambrose, on adjusted points, is on 1,771. That is a 90-point gap over Greg Murphy. Ambrose, Murphy and Mark Skaife and Russell Ingall are the four guys who can take out the title. To put it simply, if Marcus Ambrose wins all 3 races this weekend, he will not be beaten in the title race for 2003. But what are they thinking? What's going on in the minds of those contenders? Let's have a listen. I spoke to all of them just a short time ago. Well, Marcus, you're the championship leader. Everybody's after you. What's your approach?
Oh, stay cool, brother. Because really, we just have to mirror 3 guys, Russell Ingall, Mark Skaife and Greg Murphy. And really, it's Greg that we've got to really follow. If we can basically stay with him this weekend and hopefully beat him, the championship looks pretty safe. So we've got to get through these races. You know, as the races wind down, the chances of them climbing that points deficit back get less and less. So really, it's all about a bit of caution and trying to mirror those front 3 guys.
Greg Murphy, second in the championship ladder. What's your take on this thrilling finale to the season?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty thrilling. I didn't expect to be here, you know, 3 or 4 race meetings ago, sort of challenging, I suppose, where we are. But it's going to be pretty tough. From the way the point system is structured, it's let me stay in the championship, but it could very easily turf me out the back door pretty quickly as well, with the way we drop the worst round and all that kind of thing. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Mark Skaife, how confident are you of being champion again?
Well, I mean, I'm remaining optimistic about our chances. However, I know that it's very, very tough. I mean, we need to have a bit of luck on our side, Matty. It's a tough call from here because you know, the system is such that you need a failure from someone else and a win for us or whatever to make a big change. And you know, we've just got to remain positive about it and keep on doing our best.
If you could hold this one together and keep the championship, would that be one of the greatest saves? Because there's been a lot of pressure this year.
Yeah, look, it hasn't just been a lot of pressure. It's also been it's been a very ordinary year for us. We haven't had the best of luck, and we've been late with getting our cars ready, and lots of things that have happened to the team this year. So it's probably been one of the toughest years we've ever had, and if we can finish up there somewhere, I mean, if we can win it, it'd be extraordinary.
Russell Ingall, the championship picture getting very interesting. What's your take on it?
I'm going to win by 50 points. And if that happens, it'll be a bloody miracle.
Have you told your teammate that?
Yeah, true. I think he's got a surprise coming. No, mate. For our side of it, it's going to be very tough. Obviously, we're a few points behind, quite a few points behind Marcus, so he's going to take a bit of beating. And let's face it, he only has to finish in the top 8 of the next couple of rounds. and he's got it. So the pressure's on us. All we're concentrating on is winning races.
So you can see there that there are still 4 men in the championship race. I said that it can be wrapped up here this weekend, and it can, but if you're a betting man, you've got to say that it is odds on to go to the final round. Let's talk some of the issues here at Pukekohe so far with Neil Crompton. Mate, we know that this place is a tricky circuit, even though it's sort of simple, and it's very dangerous as well. We've already seen that.
Well, it's an unusual combination. There are a couple of very, very quick corners here, and of course 2 very slow ones. And between turns 6 and 7, a couple of enormous bumps, which really make for an awkward setup puzzle when you try and put all that together and come up with a solution. And it has trapped a couple of guys this weekend, as you know. Yeah,
not to mention also the tyre barrier placement. This is a very big issue. We need to talk about this simply because of what happened throughout the practice session to Jason Richards. This is very, very scary stuff for anybody, especially the man in the cockpit.
Right about that. Well, Jason has got a bit out of shape halfway through turn 1. The approach is about 245 odd Ks. He got the car loose, it's oversteered, and he's gone backwards into that tyre bundle which delineated the apex of turn 2. It's launched the car onto its roof, and the thing has gone around about 5.5 times and end-for-ended, and the car's been absolutely destroyed. In fact, I've just had a look at it before I came down here to see you, and it's in very awkward, very awful shape. Not good at all.
Yeah, we're going to have more on that shortly with Greg Rust. I mentioned those tyre barriers. It's a very big issue around here. Last year we had star pickets that caused all sorts of chaos. This year it's that tyre barrier that you just saw then, and there's a lot of critics out there, a lot of controversy boiling over this one. Let's have a listen to what Mark Scaife had to say after that qualifying session yesterday about those tyre barriers.
I think what it's done is definitely shown that when a car cruises along in the grass with no side loading on it and hits a set of tyres, they turn over. Fact of life. So if we think that that's the safety fix, as in the series deciding that we're going to put big lumps of tyres on the apex of everywhere, they are kidding themselves. And the only bloke we're missing is Neil Crompton, because he'd be the only bloke more fired up than us. That in Formula One they have bollards. They have something that sits on there like that at the apex of the corner, and if the car runs over it, knocks it arse over head. It's over and out. And it's not an arbitrary witch's hat. It's not a weird thing that we decide can we hit it or not hit it, but it doesn't turn cars over. So it's about time in this game that's the professional game that we purport to be, that we should put those things at the apexes and have fresh ones in place, so you stick a new one in if one gets knocked over, and that's exactly what we do.
Well, he's fired up about it. He's not the only one. Your thoughts?
Tell us how you feel, Scaife. Well, I mean, I think he's 100% right. It's an issue that's been bubbling along now for quite some time. There's been a lot spoken about it. There are minds bigger and brighter than mine out there that have puzzled over it and not come up with a solution. And in the recent past, these tyre bundles seem to have been what they feel is the solution, but they're not, are they? I mean, you look at that accident, that should have been a pretty harmless spin, and it wasn't. It's probably $100,000 or $150,000 shunt, and it could very probably have hurt a guy. Fortunately, it didn't, which was good news. I think there's a solution. If there's not an immediate one, then let's put all our heads together now and come up with one, but I think the time is right.
All right, some of the other issues here at Pukekohe. Down at turn 6 and 7, there's a very nasty bump that you mentioned, and it's quite tricky. It really unsettles the car. We've got a bit of vision to show you that will just graphically illustrate that. That's Greg Murphy going through there. Kind of looks okay. Now here's Russell Ingall. Watch him dance around like Fred Astaire. That is very dangerous there. Split him. Tell us what's going on.
Dancing like Fred Astaire is dangerous. This is a great couple of corners, 6 and 7, and the way in which those two cars got through there tells you something of the story of the weekend, Matthew, because the Kmart cars and the Holden Racing Team cars have really been beautiful there in practice and in qualifying, but the Stone Brothers cars have been a bit of a handful. Now, in this morning's warm-up, Marcus's car in particular looks a lot better, but that's been just one of the problems that they've been facing this weekend, trying to get their cars to work properly, and so far this weekend it's been all Holden with Murph and Scaife at the top of the tables, and you can see when you look at those pictures there just how much better their cars are behaving in a very awkward part of the racetrack.
All right, what about Jason Richards? Let's see how his car is behaving. The Team Dynamic crew have been working all night to try and get this thing right. Let's update you on that progress. It's good afternoon to Greg Rust.
Well, Matty, I wish we could say it was a good afternoon for Jason Richards. As you indicated, Team Dynamic has virtually worked overnight. They have stripped this car and the news isn't good. They had hoped to get it on the grid tomorrow, but as they peeled the parts off car 45, so I guess they became more concerned about safety. They have just unfortunately decided to withdraw car 45, and that's a tough break for this ever-improving team and for the young guy that finished in the top 5 here last season. Darryl?
Yeah, Greg, well, I'm down at Stone Brothers Racing, and Russell Ingall, big change from Indy, has qualified 17th here, which was a little disappointing, but This car this morning, as Neil mentioned earlier, have done a lot of work. Both cars have worked extensively through practice session. Big changes. They changed the car even with the last few minutes of practice, and both very, very much happier with the cars. And the team did a great job with pit stops at Indy, and they're working here now, getting ready for a good race.
Okay, Darryl, thank you. Of course, coming up, the shootout and race one of the Placemakers V8 International. We'll also take a little bit of a trip around Auckland, and our tour guide this afternoon will be Mr. Greg Murphy here, taking some of his mates ocean rafting. That's more coming up on your home of motorsport, Network 10. Stay with us. The weather's going to be a big factor here. I understand we've got some rain, Greg Rust.
Just a few light sprinkles, Matty, as Todd Kelly gets ready for this lap. He's on slicks, though, so this could be very interesting as the shootout progresses. The weather could become a factor.
Around to the control line, Todd Kelly gets us underway for the first hot lap of the V8 International. The grandstand on his left-hand side into turn 1, Repco corner, a blind turn down to turn 2. That's the tyre barrier that's been causing all the troubles.
You can see those spots of rain on the lens of the camera down there on the exit of turn 3, Matthew, and that's going to make this shootout something of a lottery. Remember, at our last round of the championship, Kelly was able to jump from 10th in this shootout to pole position, joining Ambrose, Scaife, Murphy and Bright as people having claimed a pole position. This year locks the rear brakes badly, gets it way out of shape, now locks the front right. He's actually got it back on target. Amazing, he actually hit the apex at turn 5.
Absolutely unbelievable. Kelly looked as though he was going off-road around at the Holden hairpin. He's managed to gather it all up, but it will certainly eat into his time. The first time as he comes around the final turn, the big sweeping right-hander that is Pukekohe Park Raceway. He stops the clock at 56.90.
All things considered, that's not a bad time.
Car number 65, Paul Radicic, has a time of 56.90 set by Todd Kelly to beat. Crosses the control line, gets the clock running. Plenty of support for this Kiwi. Team Better Electrical starting to get things together after 888 took them over. You'll see the first split time there, 14.55. That's his first mark. We know that Kelly came unstuck throughout Sector 2. He's 2/10 off the pace.
And that's a big drop even in a relatively short period of time. He used second gear coming out of turn 3. Some drivers have chosen to use third gear, and just looking outside our commentary box here at the moment, I reckon it's getting fractionally wetter all the time. So Todd Kelly, even though that looked pretty wild up into this hairpin at turn 5, may well benefit from deteriorating weather here. You can see spots on the lens of the camera as Radicic uses all the travel, the bump travel in that car, in the massive bumps between turns 6 and 7. Clean exit at the final turn at 7, but he's well down on the split time, and Radicic records a 57.86.
Well, Todd Kelly's time still stands. Greg Rust is there with him.
Todd, just tell us what happened down the end there toward the hairpin.
I went sort of fairly deep under brakes and just started to lock the rears, which wasn't a drama. But it's always a little bit hard when it's like this, because you tend to get a lot more rain on the windscreen than there is actually on the track. So you really don't know where you're at, especially on a one-lapper, so that's probably not a bad time.
Thanks, Todd.
Well, it's great to see this man in the shootout for the first time this season, Jason Bargwanna. The Mark Larkham Motorsport Orcon Ford Falcon gets it wide at the second turn, straight onto the grass. It's getting slippery out there, the rain's starting to fall, and maybe Bargwanna is the first victim.
It's a shame in many respects that we don't have even conditions for the guys in this shootout, but in some other regards, it's probably going to spice the field up for us. It'll certainly put some more edge into this championship fight in the closing stages of the year. Good straight, neat braking up into the hairpin for Bargwanna, but it's very grey outside at the moment, so I suspect it's not going to get much better in the coming cars.
Well, Neil, just as Jason Bargwanna started that lap, I just peered outside our commentary box and noticed a whole stack of umbrellas going up, and you can just see how much it's affecting the Orcon Ford. Bargwanna's time won't be near it. He slots in third at 58.12. He's paid the price of a little bit of a downpour. Paul Radicic, of course, he came out just before the rain came down, but his time wasn't that effective, a 57.86. He's with Greg Rust.
Paul, what was the grip level like out there, and was it starting to deteriorate as the lap went on?
Yeah, it was good to start with, and then the last half of the lap it just started to shower a little bit harder, and particularly up over the mountain here was a little bit tricky, but the conditions are, I don't know, they're going to get worse if it stays like this for the guys to come, which is probably good for me, but bad for them.
One of the rare times P9 might be an advantage.
You're not wrong.
Thanks, Paul.
Down here with Mark Larkin. Mark, it's obviously difficult when the conditions are going to be different now for everyone.
Well, I think Mark's probably just caught the tail end of that there. The last half of the lap looked pretty greasy, so I don't think he did anything particularly wrong. I think he did a good job to hold it together there. So I don't know what they're going to do, Darryl, because, you know, now it's actually raining, so they might have to revert back to qualifying times.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.
It'll be interesting. So they've got a job on their hands, the stewards, as the rain starts to come down at Pukekohe. What will happen in the shootout? We've had 3 men out, another 7 left. How will pole position be decided for round 12 of the V8 Supercar Championship? Back to these ever-changing conditions here at Pukekohe, and as Garth Tander goes out on his warm-up lap, might just get an update from pit lane with Greg Rust.
Well, Jason Bargwanna, paint the picture for us. What was that like?
It was a little bit daunting there, Rusty. I wasn't sure whether it was actually wet or dry, or got down to the end of turn 1 there, and it was a little bit slippery. I ended the back straight. I braked real early because I wasn't sure whether it was wet or not. I mean, there's plenty of water on the screen, but it's just hard to tell the track. One fine lap's very hard, but the same for everyone, so we'll just see how we go.
Rain's continuing to fall, guys.
Very, very difficult. Makes you wonder what Garth Tander's about to face.
Well, I think what Jason just said there as we look at Gary Rogers is in some respects not quite right, because it's not the same for everyone, and that is the problem. Darryl?
Yeah, I'm down here with Gary Rogers. Gary, what do you think?
Well, I'm buggered if I know, to be quite frank. I mean, clearly you can't have one car practice all qualify in the dry and others in the wet. I'd have to read the book of rules, I suppose, because I'm good at rules, as you would well know, and go and see my friends upstairs in the Department of Regulations. But I think you'd really probably have to go back to the qualifying times, I think. But I haven't really looked into it, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people looking into it as I speak, particularly down that end.
Thanks, Gary.
See you later.
Yeah, just to keep you informed on those qualifying times, Greg Murphy was the quickest in qualifying with a 56.54, so he is the man on provisional pole position. But in the meantime, Garth Tander has 2.82 kilometres in front of him. Qualified 7th. This is his 7th shootout for 2003.
And my understanding of the regulations is that what we see is what we get. The shootout will stand, and maybe there is some debate going on in the background, but look at that split time for Tander to Kelly. There's no way that would normally be the case. 1.1 seconds is a massive amount of time in this business in the first sector alone. So the track is going downhill very fast, evidenced by the wiper at its secondary speed on the screen, and you can see the flag flying there, which we typically call the oil flag, but it's actually debris on the circuit flag, and the debris in this case is H2O.
And it's getting heavier too, Neil. Look across the paddock and you can just see it starting to fall down around those turns that Garth just came around. So effectively we normally watch the clock in the shootouts, but at the moment we're just seeing if these guys can keep it on the tarmac, because the clock has ticked in the right order for Todd Kelly. But look at that, 1 minute, 0.24. 3.3 seconds behind that time of Todd Kelly. And you can just hear the temperature starting to boil inside Garth Tander's helmet.
The risk here in this as well is that 3 championship rounds at stake. And big pile of points, pressure in the championship, pressure to find time, changing conditions, impossible for anybody to really read what's going on. From corner to corner, it'll be a whole new experience in terror. And that makes it almost impossible for these guys, and the risk, which was the point that I was getting to, is that you bundle up and wad up a $400,000 car into a little tight ball. Darryl.
Well, Ross, this is obviously just a matter of keeping the car straight for the race now.
Yeah, it is, but one of the things I've just been told that if they think the weather's affecting the times, they'll go back to the original qualifying, and I've just said to them, if that's the case, the weather's affecting the times already, why run it? And why risk your car and it's just hard to know how hard to push, you know. I better go and watch this.
Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, he's got a little few things on his mind at the moment, Ross Stone, but that's the point that Neil was exactly making there. Why risk the car? Why risk the cars, in fact? Why keep this thing going? It's clearly affecting the times. Todd Kelly, 56.9. Garth Tander, you just saw a 1 minute flat, so it's all over as far as the clock goes.
We need to consult the Australian V8 Supercar Company or a Vesco operations guide. You can see body language from Ambrose tells me what I already know, which is the track's useless at the moment. And if in fact they can abort the shootout, we need to just do it and not muck about before someone loses a car.
Well, whilst Marcus Ambrose is effectively trundling around, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, Craig Lowndes has gone out on his warm-up lap, so he's still to come. At this stage, this session continues. Always something in the wind here at Pukekohe. This time it's something in the clouds. Look at it. The view out of the cockpit just shows you how grey it is.
That thing jumped sideways on Marcus up at the top of the hill there. And
good effort, Marcus, for those conditions, mate. Very good lap. Well done.
Yeah, 58.27. Well, we heard what Garth Tander thought about all this. Now what's he thinking, Greg?
Well, he's still pretty fired up about this, Matty.
Yeah. How can you run a shootout in conditions like this? I mean, the first two guys got dry track and the rest of us are going to have to deal with wet track. I mean, I wasn't going to hedge the car into the wall for the sake of a shootout. You know, they need to do something about it.
We'll update you more on this shortly, guys.
All right, so Craig Lowndes is the next victim. He heads on out for his hot lap. Best he's ever qualified here is 6th, and just look at that. It is diabolical for these guys out there. Only 2 men got the nice conditions, Todd Kelly and Paul Radicic. The rest have been thrown to the wolves. And it's almost like a Saturday drive, just a little bit of speed behind you, but these guys are not going to do anything stupid.
Car still made the rev limiter down the end of the straight there, so it was making plenty of straight line pace. But this will get the emotions rumbling in that pit lane at the moment as everybody calculates what this is going to do. Kind of makes a bit of a mockery of all the work that goes on in the practice sessions and the qualifying lead-up, but it is something we have to deal with. We've seen this possibility rise in the past, and today we're getting a more overt example of that, but there have been shootouts in the past, and you look at Lowndes' time there, 58.5, where the conditions have varied from one end of the session to the other, and there's been no interruption to play.
Craig Lowndes, 58.55. That leaves Max Wilson, Bright, Scaife and Murphy left, assuming they all get out there. Greg Rust?
Down here with Marcus Ambrose, just tell us what that was like.
I'm trying to win a championship and we're out running on slicks in the rain, you know. I just really tried to bring it home, and I don't know if the times are going to stay or not. I just pressed on and just tried to do as good a time as I could.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
It's a very sobering thought, isn't it? Marcus Ambrose quite clearly trying to win the championship this weekend, and already the conditions are going against him and a whole group of others. The top 10 shootout has been reduced to something of a rabble as the clouds continue to hover overhead. The rain falls down. That's your first 6. We still don't know what's going to happen. Welcome back to Pukekohe Park Raceway. Max Wilson trying to do something down the back straight because he knows that everything's against him as far as the times go in this top 10 shootout. Greg Rust, have you got any information on what's happening down there?
We're getting an update for you very shortly, Matty. First, Craig Lowndes, though. You enjoy going to work, but probably not on days like this.
Well, it's a bit hard, Greg. You just don't know what the weather's going to be and what the grip level of the car's going to have the next lap around. Like, it's okay to go around and say, OK, if it was like that, it'd be fine. But I went down the back straight going into the hairpin, and it actually rained a little bit heavier on my green lap. And, you know, you sort of, on my slow-down lap, it got a little bit worse. But now, as we stand here, it's almost stopped again. So it's just hard to know what grip level the car's at.
Wind's picking up too, guys.
It is.
Yep, so the wind is picking up. You've got to say that Max Wilson, just in the last few minutes, as Craig mentioned, it's sort of dried out a little bit. There's not as many spots on our camera lenses around the circuit, so Max Wilson's going to get some pretty good conditions, comparatively speaking, He gets the clock going now. The official word from pit lane is that the officials will review this situation at the end of the shootout. If the times and track conditions are too variable, then they'll come up with the qualifiers.
Let me just have a look at that. We've got our fastest bloke at a 56.9 and the slowest bloke's done a 60.2. Well, let me think. There's only 4 seconds difference there. Gee, that needs some scrutiny, doesn't it?
Well, the problem is, Neil, as you said, if somebody goes into a wall, somebody's got to write a check, and it's normally the team owners, and they're not going to be too happy about it if that situation unfolds. 0.2 of a second is the difference between Todd Kelly and Max Wilson throughout Sector 2, so clearly the track conditions are favouring Wilson compared to the guys that went out before him. The last 4 guys, Tander, Lowndes, Ambrose and Bargwanna, all copped it. 56.9 is the time. This will give us a good indication of exactly what's happening out there on the track. Max Wilson outside the time, 57.82, but he shoots up to second. Right, the official word. Have you got it, Rusty?
Just down here with Tony Manson. Tony, there's obviously a provision in the rules for inclement weather. What happens at the end of this session now?
Yeah, the stewards will have a look at the time set through the session, and they'll also look at what the weather conditions we're doing, and then they'll make a decision at the end of this session whether these times should stand towards grid positions or we go back to the original qualifying times.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Greg.
So here's Jason Bright. He was our 3rd qualifier, and as Tony mentioned, we'll go back to the qualifying times. That will put Greg Murphy on pole position. Keep you posted.
I mean, I understand from a content, entertaining the fans, entertaining you folks at home, it's very, very important for us, and the cars need to be out there and on display. What doesn't make sense is that there doesn't need to be a review. Blind Freddie can see the difference in the times at the moment, so I don't understand why we have this charade.
Garth Tander and Gary Rogers, for one, will be walking up and down pit lane with a 1 minute .245 written all over them to say, if you want any more proof, have a look at us. In the meantime, we have a look at Jason Bright. His best qualifying performance here, 5th. That was last year. And his best finish here, 5th as well. Outside by half a second.
It's just started to sprinkle again, Matty, so...
Gee, that's good news for Mark Scaife and Greg Murphy to come.
Yeah, Max has just lucked one in there with his lap that was certainly in slightly better conditions, and now this one for Bridie looks like it's been a bit slipperier. No, he's pumped it up to second, 7.6.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Hopefully it'll keep raining anyway, so currently second fastest.
There's Team Brock. I'm pretty sure I just heard Jason say back to the team, it was raining my whole lap. I think it was okay when he came out of pit lane, but it dumped down on him as he went around. Greg Rust?
Well, Matty, that puts Max Wilson back to 3rd. What was your lap like? It seemed drier on the fast lap, and it perhaps rained a bit more on your way back in.
Yeah, it's a bit pretty tricky conditions now. You're not too sure if the track is dry or wet, and I couldn't push as hard as I wish, you know. But it wasn't a bad lap time, you know. Hopefully, you're going to be on the top 5, which is not a bad place to start.
Better weekend for you, Max. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And if they revert back to the qualifying times, Max will start from position 4. That's where he qualified. At the moment, he's in position 3 in the shootout. Regardless of these conditions, look at what Mark Scaife is up to inside the cockpit.
He's having had a big fiddle with the anti-roll bar controls coming out of the hairpin to try and get some feel into the car. Got blade control on the anti-roll bar in 2 positions at the front and 1 at the rear, and he's just trying to get some idea of what the car's offering up. And the thing about this situation is you're compelled to have a go. You know, there is the risk, for want of a better description, that these times might stand, and if that's the case, every single millimetre of grid position's worth something to you.
On board with the HRT number 1, man who's pretty much resigned a little bit to losing his championship title, but he's going to go down swinging, no question about that. He's still in the race, and he's in this one at the hairpin.
He's been able to fire that in pretty deep up there. It's on the rev limiter for a long time, and he's been able to brake pretty aggressively, so there may be some grip available here for Scaife on this lap.
Times will tell. Look at him working the wheel as he comes around the final turn. The wiper is going furiously on the windscreen. Mark Scaife with a 57.917. All came apart for him in the final sector. He is 5th. Todd Kelly is first. Jason Bright is second on the list. He's with Greg Rust.
Well, Jason, P2 right now. How much did you dare push on your lap?
It's frustrating. I mean, you just to take off on a top 10 shootout lap and the second last corner before you're about to hit the start-finish line, you're getting all this rain on the windscreen. I knew the first half of the track was going to be pretty dry. I just didn't know how hard to push this last bit. We've got a really good Commodore here this weekend, and I was looking forward to getting out in the top 10 shootout and having a good shot at pole. But we've moved up a position at the moment, but it's not really fair to everyone, that's for sure.
Thanks, Jason.
Cheers.
Greg Murphy qualified fastest with a 56.543. Won't get near that. 56.9 is Todd Kelly's best time. The man who started on pole here in 2001. The man unbeaten here in terms of overall victories in 2001 and 2002. 1.8 seconds is the difference throughout Sector 1. Down the back straight. Pole position in WA and, of course, Bathurst for Greg Murphy in 2003.
He's pulled it up pretty effectively there, and again, like Mark Scaife, he had the car well and truly on the limit for a long time there. 0.6 down on Todd's split at the second. He's dragging a little bit more brake than we normally see. You can see the brake lights on in a spot where you wouldn't normally be holding onto it there as he uses that two-pedal operational method, and he's gone 7.6 for third.
Yeah, well, the two that in front of you had much better track condition, mate, so good job.
It's Eric Pender talking to Greg Murphy. A little bit of, well, chit-chat going back and forth between driver and team, and it's going to continue. Greg, what do you got?
Well, having a chat with Mark Scaife, Matty, that puts you to P5, but not ideal, I guess, when you've got a championship and things like that at stake.
Well, it's not, Greg, but I would like to think that common sense will prevail there in terms of the stewards determining actually what happens there, because run cars in the intermittent rain and not rain and bit of rain, you can't have a proper run like that. So hopefully, as I said, common sense will prevail.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, mate.
So, provisionally, this is the top 10 shootout page of results. Todd Kelly of 56.9, then Jason Bright, Greg Murphy, Max Wilson, Radisich, Scaife, Bargwana, Ambrose, Lowndes, and take a look at Garth Tander. You want variable, 3.3 seconds off the pace of our provisional pole sitter at the moment, which is Todd Kelly. There are big dirty clouds hanging over Pukekohe, and there's an almighty question mark hanging over that shootout. Watch this space. We'll let you know as soon as we find out exactly what they're planning to do, and then we can run through a proper grid sheet for you. We know that Greg Murphy is the king of Pukekohe. As I mentioned, he's been unbeaten here for the last 2 years, and take a look at the massive crowd. Most of them are here to see him and the 5 other Kiwis in the field, although Jason Richards, of course, won't be racing this weekend after that big off. What about Murph as a tour guide? Let's see how he goes in that role. So, as the cars line up, we need to